Yo, what up, everybody? Welcome to the Doghouse, powered by Drunk Sports Combat and Real Sports Talk TV. Listen, before we get started on the content, we have a good episode for you guys today. I want to ask you guys, do me a solid. Please be gracious. Wipe your feet when you come in the room and smash that like button. The like button helps us get in the algorithm, which in turn helps us grow. And we're a new show, so we're really trying to grow. And it's really, we really appreciate it. We really, really appreciate it. And like I said, welcome to the Doghouse. It's your boy Cash. And we're going to get into some good stuff today, man. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about Thurman Ortiz. We're hearing a buzz about that. Oscar De La Hoya, Al Heyman working together. That's kind of shocking. I mean, we've heard about it. They've been talking about working together now for a little bit. PBC, Golden Boy. Now it looks like it actually might happen, right? They've come a long way, to be totally honest with you. I never, 5-10 years ago, even 3-4 years ago, I never thought they would do any business. Because of basically how Richard Schaefer and PBC, basically pilfered the whole what felt like the whole Golden Boy roster. You guys know the story with that, but Schaefer, he's no longer there. I think the last I checked, he was with Mayweather. I'm not even sure if he's still with Mayweather or what in Mayweather Promotions. So it's kind of good to see them working together. I think that's kind of cool. PBC going through some issues. Excuse me. I heard Al Heyman is not doing, is sick. So Al Heyman's like a ghost. You never know what's going on with him. So, feel better, Al Heyman, get better. But yeah, it's only a rumor, but it sounds like it has some legs to it, some teeth to it, so to speak. Listen, Virgil Ortiz, and to me, that's a really tall task for Keith Thurman, to say the least. Keith is coming off this tune-up win with Brock Jarvis. Yeah, I know Brock Jarvis, right? Where he went to Australia. Brock is somewhat of an unknown. He's pretty much an unknown. And he was a super soft touch for Keith, And PBC gave him a soft touch, for a couple of reasons, One of the reasons, we all know Keith being out the ring forever. It felt like the fight before that. I think was that? Let me look. I think the fight before him was Pacquiao, if I'm not mistaken, right? Brock. No, it was Barrios. Sorry, Mario Barrios, and then Pacquiao before that. But it was basically Keith has had like 3 fights in the last like 6 or 7 years. So, a lot of inactivity, a lot of ring rust. So they figure, give him a soft touch, let him start to build his name back up. He just moved, and plus he just moved up to 54. He spent all those years campaigning at 47. So that was one of the reasons. And the other was, so he was originally slated to fight Tim Tszyu, right? Who was coming off the Bachram loss. Yeah, I know he beat Joey Spencer, but that Bachram loss left a little bit of a stink on Tim Tszyu's, aura and record. The plan was to bring Keith to Australia when he fought Jarvis. Kind of get him a look over there. But the plan was for Keith and Tszyu to get it in. Keith gets hurt in camp, has to pull out. Tszyu goes on to fight, a late replacement in Fundora. We all kind of know what happened with that. We all know what happened with that Fundora fight. The blood, the whole thing. It was crazy. You know what I mean? They went on to have the rematch. Tszyu loses again to Fundora, but the plan was the Brock Jarvis plan. Get Keith over there to fight Brock Jarvis. Introduce him to the Australian people a little bit. Then we can set up the Tszyu Thurman fight. And I think that Tszyu Thurman fight would have did pretty well. I like that fight for Keith, and I liked it for Tszyu. It's always good to have former champions and big names on your resume. And if Keith had won, it would have been a solid win on a comeback trail. in bidding at 154. It would have got him some big money fights and maybe a shot at. I know he says he wants a shot at the title. He wants to win another title. So that'd have been cool, but neither that never happened. So basically, here we are. So now we're looking for opponents for Keith. Keith's been calling on everybody from Errol Spence, the fight he's been calling. He's been calling Errol Spence's name for years. Errol Spence has been holding a grudge. That's a whole nother story. You guys know what that story is about. I think Errol's doing too much, but that's his prerogative not to fight Keith. Calling out Terrence Crawford. He's been calling on a lot of dudes, you know what I mean? But now we're hearing Virgil Ortiz, right? Golden Boy, Al Heyman, like I said a few minutes ago, doing business together. And real quick before we get more into Virgil and Keith, I like that all these promoters are working together, man. We had that, I call it like the dark days with, I think Errol was the first one to say this. Errol Spence was, you can't cross the street. Remember the street, the proverbial street where you can't cross the street? That street that street fucked up a lot of time in a lot of boxing. But yeah, these promoters like Oscar, Eddie Hearn, Bob Arum, and Todd DeBuff over there, Top Rank, Al Heyman, even like Queensberry, they're having to share the sandbox together. And they're having to play nice with each other because His Excellency Turkey Al Sheikh, he has a little bit of pressure on them. He has a little bit of pressure because he's making Rider Season is making big fights. They may not be all the fights we necessarily would have picked ourselves. Some of them are, but he's still making big time fights, and it's very entertaining. And even though they work with him, most of them work with Turkey, but he's putting pressure on them. They can't put on these bullshit cards they were putting on a while ago. You know what I mean? With him putting on these mega fights with all these boxing superstars. And also, it's good to see them because we don't need a monopoly. We don't need Turkey to be the only game in town. So it's good to see competition, right? All right, back to Virgil. Hold on. Back to Virgil. Like I said, I like this fight. Let's take it back a little bit. Virgil, we all remember, had some health issues at 47. Had to pull out of a couple of fights due to COVID, and he had this other sickness. I don't know. Pardon me. I don't remember the name of it, but it was like infection in his bloodstream. I forget the name of it. He had to pull out of the Stanionis fight, which I thought was a good fight. Boots went on to fight Stanionis and tuned him up, and the Michael McKinnon fight, McKinnon fight. But he moves up to 54, and let's be honest, man. He looks like a killer in a Shark Tank full of killers, right? 154 is the gauntlet. Probably the best division, I would think, right now in boxing. I would say that. He calls out Bud when he moved up. Bud declined. Not saying Bud couldn't beat him, but Bud had bigger plans down the pipe. We all know what those are. And he probably thought, the risk ain't really worth the reward. And I kind of agree with him. He had his eye on the Canelo fight. They have some common opponents. Mean Machine, Madrimov. A lot of people say Virgil looked better in the Madrimov fight. They both stopped Kavalaskis. But, some people, and I don't necessarily think that, but some people say he looked a little bit better in those fights. I think Bud was getting, I think the Kavalaskis was at 47, but the Madrimov fight, I chalked that up to Bud just, feeling out 154. Virgil and Boots. There was talk about that. That folded at 47. Ortiz had moved up, and I think they offered, if I'm not mistaken, they offered Boots to fight at 47. I think they offered Boots to fight at 47, and he declined it or whatever. No, sorry, they offered Boots to fight at 54 at the time, but Boots was trying to undispute and unify at 47, so that didn't work. I would have liked to have seen that. Also, would have liked to have seen Boots Norman at 47. A unification. I guess the money wasn't mathing for Norman. I guess Norman's getting ready to fight Haney. We'll probably talk about that tomorrow, but we'll see what lies in store for Boots. You're hearing Josh Kelly. as possible as a title eliminator, contender eliminator, and him going on to fight if he wins that. Xander, we'll see. But really, back to Thurman and Virgil. I like this fight. There's no belt on the line. Obviously, there's no belt on the line, but it's a big name for both of them, and I think it's a money fight, and I think it'll do decent pay-per-view numbers. Um, so I'm excited about that fight. If you excited about that fight, leave a comment down below. If you don't like it, leave a comment down below. But I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm excited. Virgil, he's a come forward, aggressive fighter. Throws with bad intentions to the body. That left hook to the body is serious business. He be gutting dudes. Pressure fighter with very good knockout power. Better footwork than people give him credit for, in my opinion. I don't really love the high guard defense, but he has a decent defense. Punches from different angles. Also throws that left hook upstairs. It's pretty good stamina, pretty good gas tank. Throws that power jab. He can fight from different ranges. He likes to fight in the phone book, but he can fight from different ranges. Now, I'm not gassing shit. I'm not saying he's a new Muhammad Ali or anything like that. But I like Virgil, man. I think Virgil's a dog, and he's gonna have to be at 154 because, like I said, that's the gauntlet. He showed a lot of resilience against Boachuk, getting knocked down twice. Yeah, one of those knockdowns was type Crawford Kavalasquez glove touching the canvas, but nevertheless they ruled it as a knockdown. The other one was ruled as a slip. Yeah, but two knockdowns basically. Some feel Boachuk edged him. I thought it was a bang out. I'm not mad if you think that. But it was a good fight. Boachuk, Boachuk's a dog too. So, I think Boots wants to smoke, 100%. You know what I mean? Whether Boachuk edged him or not, I'll leave that for y'all. But it was a good fight. So, we're gonna see. Keith Thurman, on the other hand, Keith still has power, right? They say power's the last thing to go. Keith still looks like he can move. I know people think he's soft to the gut and can't handle body shots. Everybody references that Luis Galazzo body shot that got Keith, on his bike. But I think that's just a little overblown, man. I don't really recall anyone dropping Keith besides Pac-Man, especially with a gut shot, a body shot. So I think that's a tad bit overblown, but even though Keith, he's not. I think he fought in. What did he fight? Brock in March? Fought Brock Jarvis in March, maybe, right? Yeah, he's still very inactive. So there's still rust on Keith, in my opinion. And to get in there with someone like Virgil, that's a tall task. You know what I mean? And I know a lot of the inactivity is due to injury, and I think some of it is just. I think it's injury, and I think Keith actually took some time off. But I think that's a concern. You know what I mean? But like I said, he still has power. He can still drop Virgil if Virgil's not careful. Keith has, to me, the better footwork, the better head movement. He's quick. He's more experienced. Former champion. He's been under the spotlight. He's been in huge fights, right, with Danny Garcia and Sean Porter and Manny Pacquiao. So he has a lot of experience. Josecito Lopez and Robert the Ghost Guerrero. Keith's been in there. Keith has had some big fights. So the experience is definitely on Keith's side. But like I said, the ring rust, the inactivity, fighting 3 times in the last 6 or 7 years. Virgil's been pretty active, since he went up to 54. One thing I said, we know that Keith can take pressure, right? We know Keith can handle pressure because Sean Porter was the pressure fighter. Now, I know Sean ain't got the power that Ortiz has, but Sean definitely was a pressure fighter, and Keith handled that pretty well. So I don't doubt that Keith can handle the pressure. Can he handle the power? That remains to be seen. But still, in all, I think it's a good fight for both those guys. And I think that bolsters them. A win for Ortiz puts him right in line for a title. It's a big name, puts him right in line for a title shot at 54. Um, Pedigree wise, right? Let's talk a little bit about their pedigree. They both have excellent trainers. Dan Birmingham, Keith's trainer, longtime trainer, had him since he was a kid. He's trained the likes of Jeff Lacey, Winky Wright, I believe Chad Dawson for a little bit, Edna Cherry. So Keith has been around. Not only has he been around Dan Birmingham, who's had him since he was young, so there's that chemistry there. He's also been around those other guys I just mentioned, the Winky Wrights and the Jeff Lacey's and the Chad Dawsons. He's got to see that. So he's been around some greatness. So his pedigree is also very good. Virgil, on the other hand, great amateur background. He's trained by Robert Garcia, and we all know Robert Garcia. He's worked with everyone from Nonito Donan, to his brother Mikey Garcia, to I think Anthony Joshua. Yeah, Anthony Joshua was with him for a hot second. Abner Mares, Jose Ramirez, Bam, Brandon Rios. JoJo. Shout out to JoJo and Regis for that fight Saturday. But yeah, JoJo, Brandon Rios, Marcos Maidana. Pardon, the list is extensive. So they both have a good pedigree. Virgil, great amateur background, good trainer. Both have good trainers. So this fight isn't definite yet, but I definitely think if they make this fight, I think it's gonna work out. So I'm eager to see it. I want to see it. Y'all let me know in the comments if you're as eager as me to see it. I've heard some people like shit on it. Other people are excited like myself. So there's no right or wrong answer. You know what I mean? So we'll see how that plays out. Also on the undercard, supposedly or potentially, I should say, has Arnold Barboza versus Errol Spence's guy, Frank Martin, the Ghost. You know what I'm saying? Both coming off. I think they're both coming off losses, right? Yeah, I gotta check that box. Because Frank's last fight was the Tank, right? Yeah, Frank versus Tank. Yeah, he lost to Tank, and Barboza just lost in that Times Square, 42nd Street debacle. And I say debacle because it was just a boring show. But he lost to Tio. But Barboza was looking good before Tio, man. He had the win over Ramirez. A lot of people say Ramirez is shot. He kind of looked shot against Devin, but it was still a good win for Barboza over Ramirez. He had the win over Catterall. That was a good win. But Barboza has had a lot of trouble with Tio's movement and the athleticism in that last fight. And Frank has very good movement. We saw that in the Tank fight. I think his stamina ran out a little bit. I think he gassed out in the later rounds and got caught slipping against Tank. You can't get caught slipping against Tank. It just takes one mistake and put your lights out. That's why I got to give Lamar Roach a lot of props because he didn't really make too many mistakes. So hopefully we get to see that fight. Doesn't look like it, but another thing of concern. I like Frank in this fight. But he has been off for a while. That Tank fight was a while ago. But so that's a concern. A little bit of ring rust. But if I had to bet on it, which I possibly could, I like the matchup of Frank. I think Frank can beat Barboza. Barring that ring rust isn't too crazy. But Frank wants to get back in the mix, right? I wouldn't say he wants to bang out at 140. Pause with all these dudes up there. The Gary Antoine Russells, the Subriel Matias's, the Leon Paros, the Richardson Hitchens. 140 is a stacked division as well. So he wants to have his name up in there. Keyshawn's up there now. Keyshawn Davis. So he wants to have his name in the mix with those guys. So a win against Barboza, you know, it's gonna help his case out a little bit. I know Barboza said he wanted to fight at 47. I don't know. I don't think they would do it at a catch weight. I don't I can't see that. But we'll see. But Barboza is not a slouch. He has some experience. Doesn't really have any pop though. And like I said before, he had trouble with Teal's excessive movement. That's something, like I said, that's something Frank does well. Barboza can box a little bit. He has a lot of heart. So I think it's a good comeback fight. I think it's a good fight for both of those guys. But Martin, man, he's got to get some more dates, man. I'm hoping PBC, when they announce the second half of the year schedule, that they have a little bit more dates. Go over to the zone or something. Do it. PBC, go over to the zone, man. You probably get more dates over there. I'm pretty sure Bob and them are going over there. Bob Arum and Top Rank, and I think that they're supposedly supposed to do some deals with multiple outlets. But let's get everything in the zone, right? The zone. Like we got Oscar over there. We got Eddie over there. Let's get Bob over there. Let's get Al over there. They need more dates, man. But yeah, like I said, if Frank gets past them, there's a lot of competition up there. Keyshawn, Puello, Gary Antoine Russell, Tio, Pato, Duarte, just coming off that win against Sims. Duarte's up there, so you know, he could put his name back in the mix after the Tank loss, rebuild himself and get himself back in that mix. So I'm excited. So far, those two names on the card is it's pretty good. We'll see what they add to it. We'll see if it even gets made, but we'll see what they add to it. If the fight does get made, I like that. Ortiz, Thurman. Yo, let me play that. Let me play that clip. Hold on. Ortiz, Thurman, right? Y'all remember this, right?
You better not duck me, son. You better not duck me, son.
We need that Keith back. You know what I mean? The aggressive one time. We need one time back. Not sometimes. Not, you know what I mean? Not once upon a time. Not run time. We need one time back. You know what I mean? So hopefully we'll see that. I'm rooting for Keith. I like Keith, man. Keith is good for boxing. You know what I mean? Keith is very good for boxing, in my opinion. He knows how to promote a fight. There's certain guys that just know how to promote fights. You know what I mean? Keith is one of them. AB used to be one of them. Floyd was a master at that. Who am I missing? Who am I missing? Who am I missing? David Benavidez is good at that. There's a bunch of guys, yeah, but he's one of the guys with the shit talking. Gets a little crazy, and it's very entertaining. Tio, as much as I don't like the little racist shit that he's been doing. He's trying to entertain. Bill Haney, even though he's not a fighter, he's Dev's pops. He knows how to promote a fight. You know what I'm saying? Hitch is starting to get that way. Hitch is starting to talk a lot of shit. So there's some guys that just know how to promote fights. They know how to make the fights interesting at the press conferences. Caleb playing a little bit, so I'm interested to see. Keith, like I said, Keith is good for boxing, man. So y'all may agree, y'all may not agree. It's all love. Just be respectful. I'm gonna be respectful. Leave your comments down below. Tell me if you like the fight. Tell me if you don't like the fight. But yeah, at 54 right now, that's probably a good look for both of them, in my opinion. But yeah, I'm gonna get out of here, man. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to Doghouse Boxing. It's your boy Cash. I appreciate the love, and we'll see you on the next episode. Peace. Peace.